Well, hello and welcome back. Today I am joined by Sarah Cook from We Do HR Support. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Julia.
It's my pleasure. Now, Sarah, since the last time I saw you, there's been an awful lot of updates. I believe there's some employment legislation updates that you're going to tell us about.
Yes, definitely. So we've got a few updates coming in April. So since we last spoke, we've been busy updating our clients' handbooks and contracts to take care of the new legislation. So just to give you a flavour, there'll be changes coming into flexible working. So if you've got an employee that wants to request flexible working, they don't have to have 26 weeks service with you any longer. So it's a day one right. So as soon as somebody starts working with you, they can request flexible working. As an employer, you are obliged to consult with the employee before you make a decision on whether you're going to accept that request or not. And from April, you will only have 2 months to respond to the request instead of 3 months. And also from April, employees will be able to make 2 requests per year instead of just 1 request. So that's a change that comes in on the 6th of April. And it's important to remember for employers the reasons why you can refuse a request haven't changed. So there are still sort of 8 set reasons why you can refuse a request. But now the employee used to have to before consider those reasons in their request and kind of like articulate what mitigating things the business could do to support the flexible working request. There's no requirement anymore from April for the employee to have to do that. Um,
Wow.
and another change that's coming up is to annual leave. So from April, employees will be able to carry over up to 28 days annual leave into the next annual leave year. And that's in circumstances where either they've been off sick themselves or they've been out of work caring for a family member, or perhaps, as happens in a lot of small businesses, it's been a really busy time in the business and people have been asked not to take their holiday but to stay at work. So in that instance, employees will be entitled now to carry over up to 28 days. And they're also reintroducing for people who work irregular hours. So if you work different hours every week, they're reintroducing the ability to do what's called rolled up holiday pay. So that's if, for example, I work 10 hours one week and then the next week I work 30 hours and then the week after I don't work any hours and the week after that I work 5 hours. What they're allowing the business to do is to say, okay, Sarah, you've worked 10 hours. So in that 10 hours, you've accrued this much holiday. In that 30 hours, you've accrued this much holiday. And then just pay me for the holiday time that I've accrued. So they stopped that in about 2006, I think, but now it's coming back in. So you're allowed to do it again. And
Why
an
the
important,
change, Sarah?
mm?
Why the change? Do you know why they've changed that?
I think because there was some concerns with the way it was being calculated. And so I think they said, right, no, you've got to make people like take their holiday. So now, but that's really quite difficult, and it's really difficult to calculate as well. It's bad enough to calculate if somebody goes from full time to part time, what the holiday is. I won't tell you for how many years I had a giant calculator on my desk with the calculation on the back of the calculator to work it out. So, it's one of those things where no matter how long you've been in HR, if somebody says, oh, Fred's going from 40 hours a week to 30, can you recalculate his holiday? You always get someone else to check it for you. It's just one of those things that, but yeah, so I don't really know why they changed it or why they're bringing it back. But I think the other part of it as well is that employers have to remember, if people regularly earn commission or work overtime, that has to be part of that holiday calculation. So you can't take it on just the basic salary. So if in that example previously, if I work those varying hours every week, but I also earn commission every week. So when I when I work 5 hours, I might not earn as much commission as when I work 30 hours. What you have to do is you have to take an average hourly rate and calculate my holiday based on not only my basic rate, but how much commission I would have earned in those hours as well, and pay me that.
Wow. It sounds
So if you
quite
think,
complicated.
well, it is complicated, but if you think, if you were a person who works on commission, so say, you're on the basic minimum wage, but you earn commission. But if I earn a lot of commission and I can make my, £10 whatever an hour into £20 an hour, if I'm only being paid £10 an hour when I take holiday, then I'm only going to take half my holiday, aren't I? Because I'm only getting paid half of, or if I take a week's holiday, I'm actually only getting half of what I would have earned. So that's why you have to factor in the commission payments or the overtime payments that you would averagely pay that person in a week when they're taking their holiday.
And for a small business owner, then, like you do HR, that is what you do. But for a small business owner that doesn't have HR support, how are they going to cope? How will they know what's happening?
Well, that's a good question. So we've got a newsletter, and we've got a newsletter on our website. So you can go to our website and you can check out the newsletter. We have sent out information to all of our clients, and there is stuff out there to find it, but it's not, it's not easy to find. But you do need to make sure that you are, you're keeping up to date with these things. It's helpful in one sense that the legislation changes normally every April and every October. So as an employer, if you make a diary note to sort of check in February, March time what's going to be happening, then you could at least have a bit of a head start. And normally, around this time of year, you'll find us HR people talking about the changes. So you can check out stuff on LinkedIn and local websites and things like that. But, as somebody said to me once, Sarah, I need you to come in and help my business because I can't keep Googling what to do when. So, yeah. It's
That's when
difficult.
mistakes are made, isn't it?
It
That's when
it
mistakes are
is.
actually made, and it can be costly for small businesses as well, because if they're not keeping up to date, something goes wrong, and that's essentially why you do need support, HR support within your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, if you don't have what you want, the rules and regulations that you want your team to follow laid out in your contract and your handbook, that as a business owner, that's where you give yourself the rights that you want to have in this employment relationship. The employee has rights enshrined in law. The employer has very little. And I probably said that the last time I was on as well. But it is important that your handbook and your contracts spell out what you want your rights to be. But it's also important that you keep those documents up to date, because I have seen in the past people go to tribunal and we read all the case notes and things like that. And I've seen several case notes where a tribunal judge has said, but I know you're telling me that you did this, employer, but I'm looking at your contract and I'm looking at your handbook and they're out of date several years, they're not compliant. So what is there about what you're telling me to make me believe that you've followed the legislation, you have been compliant, because you've been taking on new people with an out of date contract for the last 3 years. So, and those are things that employment judges think about. And, as somebody said to me only the other day, it's not a problem until it's a problem.
And that's so true.
And then it's
So,
too
so
late.
true.
Yeah.
And costly.
And so that can be costly. In that particular case I'm thinking about, what was awarded to the employee was uplifted by 25% because the contracts were out of date. So, you know, it is, as an employer, it's your duty to make sure that you are up to date. And, you know, ignorance is not a defense. It's no, you can't say, oh, well, I didn't know that had happened. It's like, well, that's part of your job as an employer to make sure that you're on top of these things. So, that's why, you know, people like us exist to help you, you know, to help employers stay on top and not have to worry about that stuff. You know, if you hand it over to us, then, you know, we're on top of it and making sure that you're remaining compliant. And as I said, you know, that's, we've just talked about the holiday entitlement and flexible working. There's also carers leave coming in April. So if you have somebody in your business that needs to care for someone, and it doesn't have to be a family member, it could be, you know, an elderly neighbour, or something like that, they are entitled to take a week's unpaid leave to look after that person. And it doesn't have to be all in one go. It could be, you know, half day here and a half day there. There's also changes in redundancy protection. So women who are on maternity leave currently have protection if there's a redundancy program in the business that they work for. So, which means that if you've got any alternative roles, they have to be offered first to women who are on maternity leave. So that protection is being extended now to up until the child is 18 months old. So if you've been on maternity leave and you've just come back and they're going through a redundancy program, then you still have to be offered the alternative roles, and it's you should be offered them first before anybody else. So that's been extended. And then there's been some changes to paternity leave as well. So men can take 2 weeks leave, which is either, so it's the same as the first 6 weeks of maternity leave. It's 90% of your salary, or the SMP rate, whichever is lesser. And so men get 2 weeks, and they used to have to take those 2 weeks within the first 8 weeks of birth. And they used to have to take them all at the same time. But from April, they'll be able to take them in the first 12 months after birth, and they'll be able to take them 1 week here and another week, later in the year. So there's changes to those. And then there are changes to the national minimum wages as well. So, and there's a bit of there's a banana skin in this as well, I think, because so this year, if you were 20 years old, the minimum wage is £7.49 for a 20-year-old. For a 21-year-old, there's a rate of £10.18, and then when you're over 23, it's £10.42. But this year they're taking out that 23 age bracket. So at 21 is when the top rate comes in. So if you are 20 at the moment and working 40 hours a week at £7.49, you're earning £15,579 a year. If you have your birthday in April, just when the new rates come in, not only does it go up because you've turned 21, but it goes up significantly because they've taken out that 23-year-old band. So previously, you would have gone from 15,579 to 21,174. But this April, you'll go straight up to £11.44 an hour. So you'll be on 23,795. Wow. So employers might look at that and think, they're going from 15.5 to 23.8. That can't be right. There must be something wrong in there. But it's that's specifically a 20-year-old who turns 21 just as the rates go up. So I did that on purpose to make the biggest difference. But you can see, and there will be people who are turning 21 in April just as the new rates come in. And that's a significant increase in their salary. And I think it's a bit of a because we're all used to the rates going up every year, but we're used to the same wage bands, the age bands in them. I think that one will be a bit of a tricky one for some people. So you need to make sure you're catching all your people and testing whether they move into the new bracket by virtue of their age as well.
It's something you need to calculate in your business anyway, isn't it? Because some businesses may not have forecast that because they didn't know it was happening. So
Yeah.
these are all things you need to take into consideration when you're, planning your business
Yeah, because
ahead.
that will make a big difference for
Oh
on
yeah,
a payroll budget for some people.
definitely. So lots and lots of changes then. This is
Yeah,
why we
yeah.
need you to keep us up
It
to date.
is, yes, because that's the key headlines. There's some changes to TUPE, which is a really complex piece of legislation, which, I definitely can't do justice on a podcast. So if anybody's got questions about TUPE, they need to come to us direct.
Send them to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't worry, we'll have
And
your details after.
excellent, yeah.
So, any more updates, Sarah?
Well, there's a piece of legislation which potentially will come in April 2025, which is neonatal care. So that's the opportunity to take leave, which is paid at the same rate as SMP. SMP is statutory maternity pay, just in case people don't know. It's paid at that rate for up to 12 weeks if your a newborn child is in special care baby unit or something like that. So, but that's due to come in April 2025. So of course we could have had a change of government by then. So it's not guaranteed that it will end up but that's one to look out for as well, because that will make calculating all the maternity stuff just add an extra layer of complication into it.
The joys of running a business, Sarah. One
Yes.
thing that shouts out to me though, because of all the changes in legislation, you know, for businesses, for business owners, it can be tough for planning and preparation. Everything's a lot harder at the moment for some businesses. So you have to have resilience. And that's one thing I know that, you've had a lot of recently, the last couple of years. You've had your own challenges and you've had to be incredibly resilient. So just, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think you're very right. Business owners do have to be resilient, and building a resilient organization is going to be one of the key ways to be successful in the future. And yes, I have had my own personal challenges. So this time last year, in fact, exactly a year ago today, I was having my first operation of 2023 for bowel cancer treatment. And I was diagnosed in the December, and that came as a complete shock. I had no symptoms whatsoever, and I'd just done one of these. They send the poop kit to your home, and I'd done the test and sent it off, and they'd called me back in, and I had very early stage bowel cancer. So this time last year, as I say, I was having a piece of my bowel removed. And then I spent 5 months with a stoma bag, which I then had reversed in the summer. So I had to be quite resilient, around that, and getting better and stuff. And unfortunately for me, I didn't need any further treatment, and I'm now just, they check up on me every 3 months, just to make sure nothing's coming back. But then late last year in October, one of my sons is trying to be a professional football player, and he ruptured his ACL, so he had to have reconstructive knee surgery in October. So as you can imagine, I was pretty glad to see the back of 2023. Really glad to see the back of 2023. And then at the beginning of January, we got a phone call to say my other son, not to be outdone by his twin brother, had broken his leg in jiu-jitsu. So that was, and I have to admit, I just went, oh my God, but it's next year. we can't go on like this. I can't. And I said to my other half, if anything happens to you, I'm just going to get in the car and drive off a bridge because I can't cope with any more of this. But Ethan has had to have an operation as well. So in the last 12 months, the three of us have had 4 operations.
Oh,
And then my mum got pleurisy. My mum, who is the world's fittest 80-year-old. I think the last time she was sick was like 1974. And she never gets cold, anything. She had all her COVID vaccinations, never had COVID, never even had a side effect from a COVID vaccination. She literally is the world's fittest 80-year-old, but she's had pleurisy. So that's been a bit of a worry as well. So yeah, building your own resilience as a business owner is really key. You've got to look after yourself, and you've got to look after your family, and you've got to look after your business. So it's important, for you to kind of, I don't know, for me personally, I notice if I'm not doing the things that I know are good for me, like getting out for a walk in the morning, doing my exercises, being mindful what I'm eating and those kind of things. And when I notice, oh, I'm eating a load of rubbish, or I haven't been for a walk the last 2 mornings, then you start to think, right, okay, I'm
yeah,
I'm getting I'm giving up the things that I know that keep me healthy and resilient in order to do more work. And if I keep doing that, I will only be able to do less work because I'm not keeping myself healthy and resilient. So you kind of give yourself a good talking to, and then get back to doing the things that mean that you can turn up for work, sort of switched on and ready to get on with it. So I think, that's really important. And as a business owner, if you set an example of being resilient, of working on your resilience all the time, then it means that your teams, will pick up on that and do that. And there's kind of like 5 key things to being resilient. I think so personal resilience is about kind of like finding your purpose. And I think for business owners, that's really easy because we do have a purpose and a passion that leads us into this. So that sometimes is the easiest way to sort of latch back on to what is good for your mental health, is reminding yourself of what your purpose is and why you're doing this.
yeah,
Self-belief. And I think, that's arguably is a hard one, especially if things aren't going so well in the business. It's hard to maintain your belief in yourself. Keeping your social network. So that's why the networking is so good, especially if you are on your own, you're a solopreneur, or and sometimes as well, it's like Saving Private Ryan, the gripes go up. So, if you're the business owner, you've got no one to gripe to. So actually having your network and making sure that you're attending your meetings and not giving up your meetings because you're feeling stressed and overworked, that's also a good indicator. Um, and embracing change. Change comes along and it happens, and sometimes, every cloud has a silver lining. So it's about finding what's good about this change. How can I make the most of it? When I went into hospital this time last year, Jana and I talked about, okay, what shall we do? And we actually took the opportunity for me to work on some more business development stuff as I came out of hospital and started getting back into work, because that was something I could pick up and put down when I felt tired and I didn't have the energy to do it. And it worked. That was a good thing for our business, because it meant that we were kind of like, getting really focused on the business development side of things. And then, the last thing of the 5 things is being optimistic. And, I am an optimist, and I've always been an optimist. And actually, I think research shows that optimists live longer. I don't know whether that's kind of like blind faith, or actually whether we
but
just live longer
listen,
because we're.
but listening to you, you can really hear that though you are an optimist. You're, positive, and it's like you kept going. You've had so many challenges, but yet still, you've just kept going. And as a business owner, that's really important. And one of the vital things I heard you say really is that you have to look after yourself. You need to have that time out. And it's very easy to be on the treadmill and think, well, I've got this work to do, that work to do. And then you put yourself last, and then you burn out. And that's no
Yeah.
good to anyone.
No,
So
no.
definitely. Wow. So what's next for you then, Sarah? You know, what is next?
Um, so I think, we're trying to develop our business, and, as we're
Mm,
3.5 years old, and as with all businesses, we've done some stuff that didn't work, and we've done some stuff that did work. And I think over the last 3.5 years, we've learned a lot about, this kind of like outsourced HR business. We've worked with some people who've, taken to, um, consultancy basically really well, and then other people who have gone back to in-house roles because it's maybe not, the consultancy side of things isn't what they wanted to do. And I think what we've learned as well, along the way, is that every business is different, and I suppose we knew that, and we set out to be, to deliver what you want us to deliver as a business. But what we've also learned is that a lot of the things are very similar actually. So if we can be a bit more tailored, with some things, we can save some legwork, and we can save some time and energy for both sides, by having stuff ready, that then we just have to tweak, to
mm,
to support each individual business in the way that they want supporting. And what's next is kind of like onwards and upwards. So we want more clients, we want to work with more businesses. We are developing, more content. So we've recently developed a kind of, a Chupi. So I said I wasn't going to talk about Chupi, but here I am talking about Chupi. We've developed a sort of an easy project. So Chupi in a box, if you like. So if you're buying somewhere, if you're merging somewhere, if you're moving people, if you've won a contract, you've got to Chupi people in. If you've lost a contract, you've got to Chupi people out. We've got a kind of process that is a off the shelf process that clients can come, and they get the documentation, they get the framework for it, they get us to help them and support them through the process. So we've developed that as a piece of content. We're also developing a kind of, a people strategy, piece as well. So sort of 7 easy steps to building your people strategy. And in a lot of cases, it's just about asking the right questions. So what do you want to achieve? And sometimes you won't know the answer, and you'll need to go away and think about it in terms of what does that mean for your people. But if you've got clarity on what your business goals are, you then need to look at how those goals are going to be delivered by the people that you've got. And you need to be quite, clear about whether the people that you've got can deliver those goals. Because if you've got some big ambitious, plans, then do you have the right team in place to deliver those? You might need to recruit some more people, you might need to change the skill set slightly, you might need to train the people that you've got, to do different things to be able to deliver those plans. So that's what we want to be able to, provide things that are quite tangible, as well as asking the right questions, and almost coaching people to the right answer. We also want to provide a tangible framework for people to use to be able to do it as well.
I love listening to you, Sarah, because you just get so much value and so many little nuggets that you just throw in there all the time.
I should ask you to cross my palm with silver before you talk to me.
Next time, next time. But going back to, the whole issue of resilience and
Mm.
businesses now, you know, going back to, what you said about the changes that are happening, and just business in general, do you get a good feel when you're out and about with businesses and companies now in terms of, are you finding that business owners are having much more resilience, or do you feel that there's still like a struggle?
Um, that's a good question, and I think, resilience, it's a well, isn't it? It's um, access to the ability, it means the ability to bounce back. And, there are only so many times you can bounce back before you have to do some work in building your own resilience. Um, and I think there are definitely people, I think there's definitely a much greater understanding of what resilience is, why it's necessary, and why we need it in our businesses. I think there are a lot of people out there who are low on resilience, but I think what's different from a few years ago is that they know they're low on resilience, and they are trying to do things to build that resilience up, and they understand why they're low on resilience. I mean, COVID was a massive thing, and then there are kick-ons from that have happened, all the way through the last sort of few years. Cost of living, fuel prices, gas and electric prices, um, interest rates going up, and all of those things have had an impact on business. So I think there's a greater understanding. I think there's probably a lower level of resilience, but that's understandable. You wouldn't expect anything different. But I do think in terms of being ready and creating resilient organizations, people are getting prepared, so that people talk about disaster recovery plans. I've had more people talk about disaster recovery plans in the last few years than I have in my entire career beforehand. So lots of people thinking about what happens, lots of people thinking about adaptability. If we need to change, how can we change, how adaptable are we? Lots of people talking about collaboration, especially in the sense of, bringing people back into the workspace. They're talking about, actually, if we're going to bring people back in, we need to bring them back in for something it's worth bringing them back in for. And that's about, working on things together and being collaborative. And then I think, businesses are thinking about their responsibility, both to their clients, to their staff, to the planet, as an organization, how responsible, are we? What do we need to do to be more responsible? So I think people are taking that on as well. And I think the biggest thing of all is trust. And I think, people are looking. So I've been using this little trust equation for years in kind of like leadership and development and coaching and that sort of thing. And it's about being credible, reliable, and there's a kind of like a intimacy. It's credibility, reliability, and intimacy. So it's about being a person who knows what you're talking about, doing what you say you'll do, and giving of yourself, allowing people to get to know you and build a relationship with you is the intimacy piece. And all of those things add to whether you are seen as trustworthy. And then what takes away from it is something underneath it. It's like a this plus this plus this over this. And self-orientation is the thing that takes it away. So that's that element of what what's your real, have you got an ulterior motive? And I think self-orientation is easy to understand if you think about politicians. And we always approach politicians with this kind of like air of skepticism because we don't know what their agenda is. We're pretty sure that when they talk about wanting to do all this good, there's some piece of self-orientation underneath there. And I think if you want to build trust, you have to lower that self-orientation. So you have to be doing this because you're doing it honestly and openly, not because you've got another agenda. And if you have got another agenda, just be open about it. And that, that builds trust as well. And I think trust is a really big thing in organisations. And
Massive.
maybe we're seeing a growth of trust, and we're seeing organisations where trust doesn't exist are the ones that are finding things more difficult.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff, Sarah. Powerful stuff. Sarah, as always, I always find it fascinating talking to you, and I will make sure that in the bio you'll have your details. And if anybody wants to find out much more about what Sarah's talked about in terms of the upcoming legislation, or indeed the power of resilience, then do let me know. Thank you very much, Sarah, for being my guest today, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks very much.